want to start off with the quote that we had in meditation today, which not everybody was at, so I'm going to repeat it. With the tenderness we might bring to stroking the cheek of a sleeping child, we can softly place a hand on our own cheek or heart. We can comfort ourselves with words of kindness and understanding. And that comes from Brach from her book, Radical Acceptance. Embracing life with the heart of a Buddha, I think is the subtitle. And so the reason that I'm bringing this up is because yesterday was class 6 of our forgiveness class, and yesterday morning and Thursday evening, I facilitated 2 90 breathwork sessions, and both of them were the same journey, grief and loss. And in order to be prepared to facilitate those journeys, I had to breathe the journey myself, and it was one that I hadn't breathed before, but it was just being called into being by the 2 groups that were breathing this. And so I breathed it on Thursday morning, and I breathed it with the intention to just be aware of how the journey unfolded, thinking, I don't really have anything that I'm grieving at the moment, nothing, specific, no person, no experience, whatever. Wow, I was not prepared for what happened during this journey. And so I've been facilitating 90 breath work for about 1.5 years now, and I do it here once a month, I do it at a clinic once a month, and every now and then I do it online and different things. And each journey is completely different. There are different themes, and even if you breathe the same journey at a different time, you're a different you, having a different experience, so you're going to have a different journey, right? So I have some of my favorites that I will breathe from time to time, and this was a new one for me. And so as I'm listening and paying attention and sort of making mental notes that I was then going to make, notes of for my event flow, whenever, I don't remember where in the journey it happened, but all of a sudden, these floodgates I didn't even know were there, opened wide, and out came gushing and erupting these waves of sorrow and grief for a relationship that I didn't even know was that deep. The relationship, yes, but the sorrow and the grief. Like it completely gobsmacked me. I just wasn't aware. And then it just kept going and going. I have not sobbed like that. I have not cried like that. I have not wept like that. I have not screamed like that. Had that kind of epic release, I can't even remember when. And so I thought, wow, what is going to happen at these 2 journeys, on Thursday and on Saturday? And at both of those journeys, there were people who came in with an intention around a specific person or a relationship, and then very quickly it turned into something different as whatever it was that wanted to come forward had the opportunity to be unleashed. And so many people experienced this profound release from this loss that they weren't even necessarily aware of. And so this was kind of hanging around in the atmosphere for me as I was preparing for this class. And I was preparing for this class while I was preparing for today, while I was preparing for the 9D journey. And so the thing that kept coming up for me was acceptance and compassion. Because I just had all these balls that I was juggling, all these plates, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it was a lot. And I was feeling sleep deprived, and I was feeling stressed and stretched really thin. I brought it all on myself. Nobody was making me do any of it, but it was just a jam-packed weekend, and it all just kind of perfect stormed itself together. And so kindness and understanding, acceptance and compassion for this is where I am. And I knew that I was going to be in the class yesterday with not having done my homework as the facilitator, right? And what I decided to do at the very beginning of the class, knowing that there would be people that would not necessarily do or have the opportunity to do the homework, was to incorporate some of the homework in the class itself so that people still had the experience of doing the work. But I would change it around a little bit so it wasn't the exact same thing. And so yesterday, instead of repeating the Make a Beautiful Creation practice that was at the end of the chapter that we had been working on, what I decided to do was we're going to arrive exactly as we are and where we are on this journey of forgiveness, and we're going to create something around compassion and acceptance. And at first I could feel that there was a little bit from certain people of like, I don't know if I want to do this, but there were tons of art supplies, so many different mediums. You could pick paper, you could pick canvas, you could pick paints, crayons, fabric, whatever, glue kind of thing. And everybody ended up taking to it. And then it was even like, what, and if you don't want to do that, write. If you don't want to write, just sit there and be with where you are, right? Just be present with what is. And so it was so incredible to just see what came up as people sat mostly in silence for the 40 or so minutes that we did this for, which is only part of the class, and then all of the creations that came out of it and all the awareness and insight that came out of just being with what is, instead of, I should be doing this, I would have done this, I could have done this, but, right? And so for me, this really sort of came to, I want to talk about prosperity and I want to talk about money today, but I don't know if I can, because this whole forgiveness and compassion and kindness and acceptance thing is, right sort of at the forefront for me. And yet, when I was sitting at my computer this morning and I was looking at the creation that I made yesterday, now I know some of you at the back maybe aren't going to be able to see this very well, but this is about the person that I'm working on forgiving, and the person that I know that I need to be forgiven by. And I keep gravitating, from one to the other. And this is why partly this is such a confusing space for me to be in, because it's not a clear cut and dried, I got to forgive that person or I need to be forgiven. It's both and. And so what really surprised me was how attracted I was to dark, to black. Like there's so much black in this. And I was attracted to different textures, and I knew there had to be some hearts in here because it was about relationship and love. And I knew there had to be like something sort of, different layers of like, there's always this beauty and this swirliness underneath. There's magic and sparkliness, that is available to make it come forward. And yet, there's like the pain of a broken heart. But the thing that I didn't say this in class yesterday, that struck me as I was working on trying to tear this heart, it was so hard to tear this paper. Like it didn't want to tear. What does that say right there? Like love is indestructible, right? Anytime we think we have a problem, anytime we think we have a challenge, anything that is coming around, like in our external world that we think, oh my God, that's so big, it's going to take me down kind of thing, who and what we truly essentially are is indestructible. You cannot diminish it. You cannot break it. You cannot harm it. You cannot mar it. You cannot tear it, because it is wholeness. And no matter what shape it's in, it's always, always whole. And same goes for us, right? No matter what shape we're in, no matter how we're arriving, we're always whole. We are always wholeness. Period. End of sentence. And so I was thinking about this in terms of money. And this morning, there was an email that came out for this class that I'm in for the next year with someone called Kate Northrup. And there was a quote in her email that says, "Most financial education completely ignores the emotional component of money. Yet, emotions drive nearly every financial decision we make, from daily purchases to major investments, and then there's everything in between," right? And it took me back to when I was a kid and the idea of an allowance. And for the longest time, my friends were getting allowance, but my sister and I didn't get one. But eventually, we like ground our parents down, and they're like, okay, here's an allowance. But it was sort of way later in life, like in our childhood, almost to the point of like tweens. And so they just gave us this money, but they didn't tell us how to manage it or what to do with it. And so what ended up happening was, I want this, I'm going to buy it. I want this, I'm going to buy it. And not really sort of stewarding the money in any kind of way. It was readily available. When it ran out, it ran out. We knew that there would be more. But we never really put a lot of thought and intention to it. And so this idea that emotions are so tied up in it made me think of emotional currency. And it kind of made me think of like, what's my emotional currency? What's our emotional currency as a community? What's your emotional currency, individually? And so that's the title of my talk today. What's your emotional currency? That frog is totally in love with its money. It is so relaxed and so super chill. It is just like having the most wonderful time in relationship with its money. And so it's a totally different perspective, right? Is that a perspective I was taught? No. There are a whole bunch of beliefs that I have around money, and it's always been the beliefs that I've been trying to work on. But the further along I get into my ministry, which really is about embodiment, like feel spirit, be spirit in the body, in your cells, in every single fiber of your being, be the thing instead of like do to like sort of become the thing. We are the thing already. We just need to be it more. And so it was about money. Like, I have these emotions around money. And even though my prosperity consciousness is so much stronger and rock solid now than it was before my spiritual consciousness studies, there's still work to be done, which is why I'm in this program. And the thing about this program is it's all about money and the nervous system. And because I worked in a chiropractic office for 3.5 years, anything about the nervous system is really fascinating to me. And so this relationship with money and the nervous system and bringing it all into alignment is so super cool. So because emotions are involved in this also took me back to David Hawkins and his map of consciousness. And when I was thinking of allowance, and how there's this allowance, you get this money, and the first thing you do is, for most kids, they will go and buy something they want, whether it's a toy or candy or something like that, rather than, I'm going to tithe 10%, I'm going to put this in long-term savings, I'm going to put this in short-term savings, and then I'll have some mad money that I get to spend on whatever it is I want. That's usually not the case. So I went to desire on the map of consciousness, which is at a frequency of 150. And so according to David Hawkins, there is lots of energy, lots of collective consciousness around desire. It is motivating the major portion of human activity, including the economy. All right? Just yesterday, Glenn told me that there's no budget in Canada. Like, we just had an election, a new prime minister, and who's a banker, and there's no budget, which I find fascinating. Anyway, so back to this. So including the economy, it's about insatiability. It is very addictive, and it's about money, prestige, and power. And it's about valuing external things rather than focusing here, right? So the God view of desire is denying. You can't have that. There's not enough of that. That's not for you. You're not worthy. Okay? And the life view is disappointment, because there's not enough to go around. I can't figure out how to get some because it's all over there. Then there's willingness, which is at 310. And this is a gateway to higher levels of excellence and success. And here, because as you go along this map of consciousness, growth is exponential. So it's not like, 2 times this is this. It's more like this, right? Here, growth is rapid. There's a commitment to participate and open-mindedness and genuine friendliness and helpful nature. Okay, so we're not living on an island or in a bubble anymore. We know that we're interconnected with everyone and everything. And this is when you start taking personal responsibility for yourself and you start turning within and you start dealing with what's going on within. There are no major learning blocks, and this is where people are continually self-correcting. Okay, so there might still be challenges, but you're more aware, you have the tools, you're noticing along the way, and you're doing something about it. You're a lot more conscious about your life. So the God view here is inspiring, and the life view here is hopeful. Okay, there's more. There's always more, and I am always more than. That is my basic life belief, right? There is always more to learn, to love, to expand into, to be expanded by. There's always more time and energy and resources. There is always more, and I am always more than what I think, what I feel, what I believe, what I've experienced, the trauma, the drama, the external stuff. I am always more than that because I am that wholeness. I am that beautiful paper that can't be torn, right? And then we move up to acceptance, which was one of the themes for yesterday's class and where I've been in the last few days, which is at 350, and this is where we're no longer a victim, because we are taking personal responsibility for how we create our life. This is part of major transformation at this stage. And so we are more responsible for ourselves and each other. There's greater capacity to live harmoniously with the forces, or let's call them laws, the spiritual laws of life, to be in alignment with them. And you're meeting life on life's terms, and you are emotionally more calm, more flexible, and inclusive. Now, the God view here is merciful, and then the life view is harmonious. Okay? Now, as you move up this map of consciousness, as you move exponentially throughout these different levels, you get to love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And this is where the compounding really, really becomes obvious, because that's when things just seem to get easier and easier and easier, because there's a lightness. There's stuff you're not holding on to anymore. There's stuff you're not dragging around anymore. You're being instead of doing more and more and more. Excuse me. So this takes me back to when I first came into VTC as a guest speaker several years ago. And there was no way to give. There was no way to donate. There was no way to tithe. And I was so curious about this because I had never been anywhere where we weren't invited or downright asked to, give some money. And it was, I didn't know about Emma Smiley back then, but it makes me curious now because Emma Smiley would say tithing is paying for our spiritual groceries. Okay, so wherever you are inspired, wherever you are nourished, wherever you are fed, you offer something, right? So Emma Smiley said that. Emma Smiley, founder of VTC. She also said, life returns to us blessed and multiplied, that which we give to life. So the more we give, the more there is to receive. And yet there was no opportunity to give. And the reason was because they didn't want our money. They just wanted our presence. That was presence enough. And for me, even though that was a lovely sentiment, I'm like, but there's a law of circulation that is in and at work all the time. And even if you don't want it, you're cutting off my opportunity to give, which cuts off the law of circulation. It cuts off my opportunity to be invested. It cuts off my opportunity to share, to be generous. And so it was a real big curiosity for me. So when I officially started, I'm like, can we bring back tithing? And sure we did. So this is the thing that I want to talk about, is that there is emotion in every single thing that we do with money. And so the way, Maria Naima says, the way you do money is the way you do life. And so if you have a loving, beautiful relationship with money, like I like to see that frog does, to me that is a beautiful sight, then this is how you show up in life, and you attract more resources, people, opportunity, experience, people into your program that are in alignment with who and what you are. This is how we build community together. But if you don't value yourself, if you feel like there's never enough time, I only have this much for this, which means that I got to make a decision, and sometimes we do, then that's when the lack starts to show up. That's when we're not sure if we can afford this or we can afford that. And that is external. That is going back down to the level of desire. Okay? But we are here because we are all at least at the level of willingness. We are here because we are all moving up to, if not creeping beyond the level of acceptance, where we're taking personal responsibility for our life experience. And so for me, I wanted to just talk about how essential it is to understand tithing versus donating versus giving. And if you look at Eric Butterworth's book, Spiritual Economics, he talks about giving. It's not about this amount of money, this percentage of what you make. It is about generosity. Because generosity, this is an inherent quality of who and what we are. And we don't want to be doing this, because when we do this, we're going to be all alone and isolated, right? And we are social, interconnected, divinely intertwined creatures who want to be in community. And so we got to open up. And when we open up, we get to give, and we give, and then we're open. There is that much more that we can receive to amplify the love and wholeness that we are, which means that we can just give that much more of ourselves again and again and again. Compounding the law of circulation that is always in effect. So tithing is typically 10%. Of whatever you make, you give 10% to where it is that you are spiritually fed. Whether it's your spiritual center, whether it is people who inspire you, whether it's different places, but it is an investment. It is part of your spiritual evolution and transformation. Then there's donating. And donating is good too, but donating is more about giving people and organizations money because they need it to do the work that they do. So it's less about inspiration. It can be, but it's not as much about inspiration as it is about need. And then there's just the giving, right? The giving, which is generosity of who and what we are, and just offering ourselves the love, the value, everything that we are, the wholeness, and offering it so that we can create a better world for ourselves, each other, and the entire world. And so according to Raymond Charles Barker, money is God in action, and it takes money to put God into action. And so what I want us to recognize is that when we give, let us give not out of a sense of obligation, but because we want to share. Because we want to express the love we are more fully, knowing that as we do, that what we express as is going out into the world to benefit and uplift the world. That's why we're doing this, right? The practicality is that we do need money to, keep the lights on and pay expenses and that kind of thing. But we also want to just feel good. We want to make others feel good. And we want to be part of this incredible, amazing, dynamic wave of wholeness and allness and love that is always, always possible to amplify and stir up. So that's what we get to do when we give, right? So it's not about obligation. It is about generosity, and it's a commitment, which is one of our 4 main values, right, here at VTC. It is a practice. And so when we ask, you to give, when we declare our generosity affirmation in a few minutes, I'm not asking you necessarily to give here, okay? We welcome any donations or love offerings or tithes, 100%. But the whole thing is to give where you are inspired. And one of my favorite things to do is to tithe to a person who inspires me. Because most of the time, people don't get tithed to. And what an incredible surprise and what a gift it is for me to get a beautiful letter, a text, an email, see the person's face as they burst into tears because they're so filled with joy because of this incredible, amazing surprise. And it's just me saying, thank you, I love you. That's it. So we get to choose where we give, and giving is about generosity, okay? It's not about obligation. Now, back to Kate Northrup. Very, very short line. Your spending is a prayer. Everything we do is a prayer. Everything is an affirmative prayer, whether we are aware of it or not. Every thought, every word, every action step, every choice we make, everything we do with our money, everything that we give is some form of prayer. It's some form of affirmation. So what is it that you are affirming? Are you affirming that you are worthy, that you are valuable, that you are loved, that you are whole, that you know that the thing that you are is this incredible, amazing, ever-flowing, overflowing bunch of goodness and allness that never, ever runs out and is always, always expressing? Or are you affirming that there's only so much of me to go around? I can only do it at certain times. And that there just isn't enough. You get to decide at any moment. So I just want to finish with this. Your emotional currency is the foundation for your relationship with money and giving. The more we commit to living with a certainty that love is our true nature, values compass, the more the love we are appreciates in every aspect of our lives, our home, relationships, health, creative expression, and financial wealth. So let us be generous of spirit. Let us give not out of obligation or because someone needs money, but because it feels good to do so. Because we're spiritually nourished and inspired to express and experience more of the love we truly are. Thank you, and so it is.